Are you God approved? When you read the Bible, does God give you a thumbs up saying, you are God approved, and everybody else is damned for hell?
Those poor, wicked little sinners.
But this confidence reveals some big flaws in Christianity itself, especially when you look at the Bible. The huge number of denominations and how this mindset fuels self-righteousness and judgment within the faith is very easy to see. Many Christians, whether Catholic, Protestant, evangelical, or otherwise, claim their version of Christianity is the one true way. They believe they got the full truth about God, about Jesus, and salvation, and everyone else is either wrong or headed for damnation. Christians often say their beliefs are the truth because they base them on the Bible, which they see as God's inspired word. They'll point to verses like John 14:6, where Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, and the life, to argue that their faith is the only path to God. Each group, whether it's Catholics with their traditions on the Pope, evangelicals with their focus on a personal relationship with Christ, or others, pick specific biblical verses or church teachings to back up their version of the Bible. And they feel certain because they believe God is guiding them, and their leaders or pastors reinforce this by saying their way is the right one and only way. But there's a problem. There are thousands of different denominations within Christianity, and each one of them express, we have the truth, and the rest of them are just bound for hell. Poor children. That's what happens when you're a child of the devil. Each of these people have their own belief, and each with their own take on what the Bible means. They disagree on major things like how to get to heaven, right? Faith alone or faith plus good deeds. What the Bible says about things like baptism, communion, or the role of women. Whether certain practices like speaking in tongues or praying to saints are legit or not. So if everyone's reading the same Bible but coming up with widely different truths, it shows that the Bible isn't clear enough to point to one obvious answer. Yet, each group insists their interpretation is the one that God approves of, and they often say other Christians are missing the mark or even going to hell. The Bible and Christianity have some core issues, some major ones, that make these conflicting truth claims a problem. First of all, the Bible isn't clear. The Bible is a huge collection of books written thousands of years ago in different languages, Hebrew, Greek, Aramaic, by different people. It's got poetry, history, letters, and prophecies, and it's not always easy to understand. For example, some Christians read Matthew 16:18, you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, to mean the Catholic Church is the one true church. Others say it just means Peter's faith, the statement of Peter. It's not a specific church. Verses like James 2:17, faith without works is dead, spark fights about whether good deeds are needed for salvation or not. Because the Bible can be read in so many different ways, it's like circular reasoning. People see what they want to see, they justify what they want to see, and everyone thinks they're right. Well, I'm right because this says that I'm right. That's your interpretation. Look at the contradictions and ambiguities. The Bible has parts that seem to contradict each other or are vague. For instance, one verse says salvation comes through faith, Ephesians 2:8-9, but another emphasizes works, James 2:24. Which is it? Both? Stories like the resurrection have different details in each gospel. Who was at Christ's tomb? This confuses things and lets different groups cherry pick what fits their beliefs. These inconsistencies means there's no single truth everyone can agree on. The Bible didn't come with a manual saying, this is exactly what it means. Okay? People, pastors, scholars, or regular believers interpret it based upon their culture, their upbringing, or biases. So a Baptist in Texas might read the Bible differently than a Catholic in Italy or a, say, evangelical in Brazil. If the Bible was God's clear, perfect word, why do so many Christians disagree on what it says? Christianity's history is full of splits. The Catholic and the Orthodox churches broke apart in 1054 over disagreements about the Pope's power. The Protestant Reformation in the 1500s split Christianity again because people like Martin Luther thought the Catholic Church was corrupt. So since then, new groups keep forming: the Baptists, the Methodists, the Pentecostals, each claiming they've got the truth. So if Christianity was united and true, why does it keep fracturing? So many denominations, so many truths. The fact that there are thousands of denominations proves that Christianity isn't one clear belief. Each group has its own spin. Again, the Catholics say the church is the one true church, founded by Jesus, and the Pope has special authority. Evangelicals focus on being born again and say other Christians who don't emphasize this are off track. Pentecostals, they stress miracles and speaking in tongues, sometimes calling other Christians too stiff or unspiritual. Lackadaisical, too lukewarm. Progressive Christians, they might say the Bible's rules on things like sexuality don't apply today, while conservatives call this heresy. So every group thinks they've cracked the code, but they can't all be right. If there's just one obvious truth, you'd expect all Christians to agree more. Instead, they're fighting over who's got it right, which shows their truth is really just their opinion based upon a specific lens. This "we're right, you're wrong" attitude breeds self-righteousness, where Christians act like they're morally better because they follow the true path. And this is why it happens. They believe God's on their side. When you think your beliefs come straight from God, it's easy to feel superior. If you're an evangelical who thinks Catholics are idol worshippers for praying to Mary, or Catholics who think Protestants are missing out on the true church, you might feel like you're God's favorite. There's a fear of being wrong. Okay, the Bible talks about hell and judgment, like in Matthew 7:13-14, the narrow way. This scares some Christians into thinking they have to stick to the group's rules or they're doomed, so they double down and attack others to prove they're on the right side. It breeds an us versus them mentality. Christians often teach that they're the only way to God, John 14:6, and this can make Christians feel like they're an exclusive group, looking down on other Christians who do things differently, or even non-Christians. For example, some evangelicals might say that Catholics aren't real Christians because they focus on tradition, while Catholics might say Protestants are incomplete without their sacraments. I can't tell you how many times I've heard somebody say, "Well, I'm a Christian because I follow the truth. I'm just a Christian," even though they disagree with somebody else. What do you call yourself? "I'm a Christian," right? Because I have the truth. I have the truth. This self-righteousness shows up when Christians judge each other harshly and they get in debates. You'll see Baptists saying Methodists are too liberal, or Pentecostals calling mainline churches dead because they don't do miracles. It's not just disagreement. It's acting like your group is holier than the others, even though they're all reading from the same Bible. Okay? And Christians often turn on each other. I've seen this over and over again in Clubhouse, on YouTube. They get nasty, very nasty. Some evangelicals say Catholics are going to hell because they worship Mary or rely on works, not just faith. And Catholics might argue that Protestants are missing the fullness of truth because they reject the Pope and sacraments. Conservative Christians might call progressive Christians heretics for supporting things like gay marriage, which obviously in my belief is wrong, but that's my opinion. Again, go back to the Old Testament. I think most Christians would agree that that is wrong, but again, it's how you interpret things. I don't think you can argue that out of the way, but progressive Christians have found a way to do that, okay? They say that Christians that are conservative are stuck in the past and ignore Jesus' love. So this condemnation comes from the flawed logic that their interpretation is the only one God approves of. But if everyone's got a different take on the Bible, and they're still all convinced they're right, it shows the whole system is flawed to the nth degree. The Bible's lack of clarity and the endless denominations means no one can prove they've got the truth. Yet many Christians act like they do, and they use their belief to judge or exclude others in their own faith. The fact that Christians can agree on what the Bible means or how to follow Jesus shows that their truth is more about a personal or group opinion than some universal fact. When every denomination claims they're right and you're wrong, it exposes the cracks in Christianity's foundation. The Bible's contradictions, vague parts, and reliance on human interpretation make it impossible to pin down one truth. And this leads to a cycle where Christians feel justified in acting self-righteous, condemning other Christians for not following their rules or beliefs. Instead of unity, Christianity often breeds division and judgment. People use their version of the faith to feel superior, whether it's an evangelical slamming a Catholic for their rituals or a progressive Christian calling conservative bigots. It's a flawed system where everyone's claiming God's approval. God's on my side, not your side. I'm a child of God and you're a child of the devil. You're a child of the evil one. I see this come up a lot when people disagree. Oh, well, I wouldn't expect less from a child of Satan. You know, your father is the devil, my father is God. Ha ha ha. Right? No one can prove it. It's the result of a lot of finger pointing and not much love. And that's what I see in Christianity today. Not much love, no spiritual discernment or no spiritual guidance or wisdom. It's basically just attacking. You know, people with a lot of low self-esteem or whatever have become Christians in many respects, and now they use this as a battering ram to attack other people, right? A lot of finger pointing, the very thing that Christ taught against. So, no, just because you believe you have the faith doesn't mean you are correct. I was in a conversation with somebody on the channel that said, well, the New Testament is flawed and it's not true, but the Old Testament is. It's the truth. And unless you believe in the Old Testament, then you have no hope. You just have, there's no point. You might as well just give up. No, that's your opinion. Okay, your opinion is the Old Testament is flawless and the New Testament is flawed, and you're going to go by the Old Testament, fine. But to say that the Old Testament is flawless and the New Testament is flawed is just more opinion and just more proof of why I said Christianity is just a disaster. Old Testament, New Testament, they've all got massive problems, but they're written in a way that becomes so vague that you can argue many different things. And therein lies the problem within Christianity. You basically pick a belief system to suit your belief, and then you follow through with it. But you judge other people along the way because you have the correct interpretation and other people don't, and you're reading from the same book. So wake up, people. Smell the smelling salts. Christianity is a great tool. It's a great religion in many respects when it's approached correctly. But to insist that only you have the truth and everybody else is wrong and is bound for hell just shows that you're putting more stake into your belief system than what the Bible actually teaches. There is a reason why we have all these different denominations, thousands of them. Because the Bible was created by man to understand God, and mankind's rational mind trying to read the Bible is going to come up with his own interpretation because they are not an explicit amount of set rules and obligations that you need to follow, right? Because mankind has written the Bible through divine inspiration. I have no doubt that there's things in the Bible that are inspired by God. But that doesn't mean that God hand-delivered that Bible to you as the canon and the NIV or the King James that you're reading is hand-stamped by God. God approved. No, that's just not true. You are God approved. And everybody else is damned for hell.